Welcome to Star Wars Timeline. My name is Ben, and in today's video I wanted to introduce a new video series that I've been thinking about for a while. I wanted to do this conversational, laid-back, almost podcast type of videos where I start an honest conversation and we tackle hot topics and things that divide the fandom, but in a more constructive manner. I really wanted to provide a platform for a productive discussion. If you're just a viewer, maybe you can drop a comment below and let us know how you think. Or if you're a YouTuber or a content creator, maybe you can contact me and we can set up this one-on-one thing where we share our thoughts or differences of opinion and, build a discussion around that. Everything that you guys are going to hear in this video and forward is not a statement of fact. It's more of an opinion. And please bear with me. I'm no Joe Rogan. It's my very first experience trying to talk casually. If I stumble a little bit here, I have my notes to quickly recover and get back on topic. And to launch this first video, I wanted to start with the politics. Very often I hear on Facebook groups and even discussing with my close friends who are Star Wars fans, people say, I want no politics in Star Wars. This is escapism for me. Leave the politics out of it. I'm tired of this stuff. And you know what? My answer to that is my thoughts that have been kind of like putting together and trying to shape in the interesting argument is that politics have always been in Star Wars. When George Lucas started it with the original trilogy, it was a commentary on Nazi Germany and the Vietnam War. The prequels talk about the slavery, the young Anakin growing up. And even when you get beyond that point, all narrative art really has some sort of commentary on human condition, and politics are a huge part of it. For example, in Star Wars, you have something like family politics. Owen and Beru Lars, they have their own way of overseeing their moisture farm, and they're controlling Luke and disciplining them in a particular manner. That's home politics. Or personal politics, like Han Solo, where he begins this as a loner mercenary. He's not willing to join the rebellion unless he's getting paid, and then later on he changes his mind. That's personal politics. So it's always has been there. And I think the point to make is that it's not that we should or shouldn't have politics in Star Wars. It's how it's presented to us. It's the wording of it and how it's constructed and tailored into the story what matters. So with that being said, I wanted to kick off with the first major topic of discussion for today, which is the non-traditional orientation and gender identity. First and foremost, you guys may remember it made huge waves around the internet. The Marvel.com official Facebook page announced that Sarit and Tarek, two twin Jedi characters from the High Republic comic books, are the non-binary gender fluid twins. And, the internet has exploded. Oh my God, what is this stuff? And people started going back and forth, and people said, enough is enough, and started, speaking negatively about the High Republic. So I wanted to reflect on that. I have been reading the High Republic novels and the comic books way before that announcement. And I already have met the characters, which I thought they were okay. They didn't quite stand out as anything special. They were just sort of there. And I was interested to see where they go. And after that announcement, what happened? My opinion didn't really change. And I quite honestly, I felt a little bit irked because, it's came out of nowhere. And I felt that post, that comment to try to communicate with the Star Wars fans that's like, hey, we're representing the LGBTQ community, came from a good place, but it really was tone deaf. And I'll explain why. Because Jedi are celibate, or they're not supposed to have attachments or relationship. Their sexual lives are never discussed in the films, unless of course it's Anakin and Padme. It's more about a family and not their sexual relationship. So I felt like that announcement didn't add anything to those characters. It was as if saying, oh, Luke Skywalker, by the way, he's white male. What does it do? As a heterosexual guy myself, I don't care if he's a guy or what orientation he is. What does that add to the story? And I make this argument that if you want to represent a group of people that is, have been shunned or not represented enough, their stories and the strength of their character should speak for itself. It is the strongest, most sincere way that you can represent them and start a conversation where other people will look into it and will be informed and say, huh, okay, I see what's going on here. And that a particular announcement from Marvel didn't do anything for the characters. And I felt a little bit irritated. Why are you telling me what they are instead of why should I care for them as characters, for their heroic deeds? And I wanted to make a comparison here to Star Trek Next Generation show. Back in season 5, episode 17, called Outcast, William Riker, who is the second in command, he has an engagement with this alien species, Janari, called Soren, who identifies as a woman, but it's really an androgynous alien species. And what's interesting, as they progress through the episode, William Riker falls for her. They start having like intimate thoughts and feelings towards another, and he doesn't care. And he's further sympathizes with her because she explains to him, and the reason I say she is that alien identifies as a woman. And what's crazy in that show is that she's not supposed to, because that alien species has evolved beyond the point of sexual orientation. And to speak of yourself as somebody as male or female is a perversion. And for a show, a television show, to tackle material like this in the 80s and 90s in a more conservative America, I felt it was so progressive and so forward thinking. It's so far ahead of its time. I felt like it's tackled that particular subject matter much more maturely than this Saturday and Tarek. Do I feel any worse about these characters? Am I going to stop reading the comic books? No. But that announcement didn't improve their characters at all. Another example I wanted to bring is Sana Starras, who is first introduced as Han Solo's wife in the new canon Marvel comic books, and later we find out that she's just another merc who is like a very self-asserted and basically a kick-ass bounty hunter female, and she's also black. And we also find out later on she's a lesbian. She had a relationship with another popular character, Afra. That I felt was much better done. Why? Because you never question what she looks like, if she's really Han's wife or not. You kind of flow with the story, and later on when they kind of like drop the info on you, oh, by the way, you know, she had a romantic relationship with Dr. Afra, you take it all in stride, or at least I do. As somebody, I believe that, you know, everybody has the right to be happy and feel comfortable with themselves and not, you know, hear anything about it from the rest of us. You know, we should be all on equal footing in what we call a civilized, you know, culture. And I felt that Sana Starras, they never emphasized of, oh, by the way, you know, she's this ethnicity, or her skin color is particular, you know, it looks this way. No, you enjoy her as a character and what she does in the comic book, and the rest speaks for itself. And I could only imagine that, you know, black comic book readers, boys and girls, are looking at this character and saying, oh, wow, she's such a kick-ass, and she looks like me. Wow, that's nice. That's an added bonus. But that's what they gravitate to. So characters that are memorable and they enjoy coming back to. Next example I wanted to make was the lesbian kiss at the end of episode 8, The Last Jedi, which it's personally my favorite of the new Disney era films. I have problems with each and every one of them. They're obviously not perfect, but that's the one that really connected the most with me. And, you know, I see flaws here and there. And then when we see that lesbian kiss at the end of the film, I felt that it didn't do anything. It was an exercise in tokenism. Tokenism is something that you kind of seem to be addressing the issue, but you're only doing it in service, and as they just kind of drop it there. And when I saw it here on 42nd Street in New York City, the reaction was very confusing. You know, what are we supposed to do? Clap like, oh, by the way, you know, it didn't add anything to it. If you really want to bring forth the issues of you know, lesbian couples and make it a normal thing that we shouldn't look down on it or anything like that, then bring those characters forward. Give them more meaningful roles in the film and for everybody else to look at it. Because I believe that information, when you shed light on something, it destroys ignorance and hatred and stuff like that. And when people are informed, they get to raise questions and say, oh, wow, why is this? Why is that? And they learn, and together as society, we move forward and not backward. And I felt it was very heavy-handed and very, very contrived, and it didn't do anything for the issue that it wanted to put in front of us. The next and the last thing I want to talk in this regards to this topic was the Lando Calrissian's droid love in the Solo movie. Lando, portrayed by Donald Glover, which I think he did a fantastic job. He has this little fling with his droid L337. In general, I thought the droid was pretty funny. She was very eccentric. You know, she fights for the droid rights, which was kind of like very tongue-in-cheek, and it didn't take itself seriously. But I felt that that little affair with the droid was a little bit, again, heavy-handed. Like, it did not need to be there. Again, did it take anything away from the film? Not really. Am I going to stop watching the film or enjoy it any less? Not at all. But once again, I felt it was not necessary. It didn't add anything to conversation. A guy and a droid, like, okay. Like, maybe they were coming from the right place, you know, from something genuine, but I felt it didn't work. Another exercise in you know, tokenism. The next big topic I want to talk about is minority groups and women represented in Star Wars. And the first and biggest example that I can think of is Luke in the original trilogy, which is, you know, white male protagonist, young man, you know, handsome looking and so forth, versus Rey. We have a new trilogy, a female character now. She's a main lead protagonist of all three films. And how do they stack towards one another? And I would say this is a very, very beautiful and strong way to represent women. Why? Because when I was growing up with Luke Skywalker watching Star Wars in the 80s, I never questioned whether he was a boy or a girl. What pulled me to him was his adventure. His aunt and uncle getting burned by the Empire, and, you know, and him being taken away on this journey with Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he meets, you know, Master Yoda and so forth. You get the idea. And when you meet Rey, for me, she represented the female counterpart of Luke. I didn't look or question for a minute, you know, that she's a female. I followed her adventure. And I would like to add to it that I disagree with a lot of fans who say that she's a Mary Sue. And I'll explain why. I take it that it's a visual language for a film to quickly relate to fans. Like, look, the person went through training, they understand what they're doing, let's move on with the picture. And that's evident in Empire Strikes Back. When we see Luke on Dagobah, yes, we have that very interesting conversation about the Force, which is much more lengthier than Rey's interaction with Luke in terms of conversations about the Force. But when we see him train, it's for a few brief moments. He does a couple of backflips, he tries to lift the X-Wing, but nothing beyond that. There is no form training. We don't show, we never see where he learns to fence. All we see in the previous episode him do with a lightsaber is to deflect a couple of training droid attacks. And of course, in episode 5, he slashes wildly and, you know, he defeats the Bantha. But then suddenly he goes versus Darth Vader, the most powerful evil Jedi out there, and he goes toe-to-toe with him. How come fans never question and point that out? You could bring a billion, you know, points pro and against that, but so is true for Rey. When we see her in The Last Jedi, she also goes through her training routine with Luke. Yes, it's brief, but the movie sort of gives you the hint of what's going on here. I felt it was well represented, and I felt that Rey went through enough emotional struggles versus Luke's physical struggles, and her ability to look after herself and being a little bit stronger than Luke from the beginning was reinforced in episode 7 when she was able to fend off the two attackers when they were trying to steal BB-8. We showed that she comes as a scavenger, a loner in this world, and she's able to look after herself. She knows how to fight with a stick. So that was personally enough for me to kind of like sell her as a capable woman. If you guys disagree, I would love to hear your thoughts. Leave the comments down below and we'll get into this and I'll try to respond to everybody. The next example I wanted to bring was Lando Calrissian versus Finn. Lando, first of all, Billy D. Williams. When you see him in the original trilogy, that man projects so much charisma and power and confidence on screen, you don't question him for a second. He just kills the role. And I mean, everybody knows how legendary, Lando is. And I felt that with Finn, it was a double-sided thing. In episode 7, he certainly comes off as this young man who is quite capable, and he makes this decision not to follow First Order and escape for a good cause, and later on join the rebel cause. And once again, you never question for a second that he's an African British actor from Britain, that his color, skin color, anything like that. No, you flow with him. He's very charismatic. He's fun to watch. He has good acting skills. But unfortunately, as the trilogy progressed, and especially towards episode 9, he's relegated, honestly, to more of a prop. He's there. He's like, Ray, I'm going to an adventure with you. And I felt it did a little bit of disservice to the character in terms of the way that the script went. So more represented in episode 7 and 8, and less represented in episode 9, and that was unfortunate for me. And now, moving on to the next set of comparison, Imwe Cheret versus Rose. Imwe Cheret, portrayed by Donnie Yen, a Canadian-Chinese martial artist actor that we saw in the Rogue One, the blind fighter with a stick, I felt was phenomenal. If you want to represent Asian culture, this is the way to go about it. Him and his partner, they both have place in the story. They have pretty dramatic scenes. He kicks major ass. And at the end of the film, when, he's sacrifices his life and he chants this mantra saying, I'm the one with the Force and the Force is one with me, I felt was quite effective. And this is the way to go. You want to be inclusive and say, there's people that look like Asians in Star Wars. Do it this way. Create new stories and characters that we care about. And when it comes to Rose, I feel like, once again, they came from a good place, but because the way that the sequels were structured, JJ tried to do his version, and Rian Johnson kind of interpreted things in own particular way, and so forth. And Rose started off in an interesting way because we see her sister in the beginning, who's obviously also Asian, and that bomber pilot who sacrifices her life. I felt for a very quick, brief moment, she tackled that role pretty well. I felt tense during that fight, and I felt bad for her death. And then when we meet Rose, we also see that she tries to be part of this crew, and first she chastises Finn, and then she jumps in, she kind of changes his mind. It was kind of interesting, but there was one pivotal scene in the Last Jedi and in the next movie, which I'll talk about, that completely flipped the character on its head. And there was a part where Finn is charging that First Order cannon, and he's about to sacrifice his life. It was such a powerfully built momentum in this scene. I believed for a second that Finn is going to die in that film. And I thought it was such a powerful and bold choice to have one of the 3 major characters die in the middle of the trilogy. I said, oh my God, does Rian Johnson have the guts to do this? Is he going to go that route? And as that scene is progressing, right in the climax of it, which would forever immortalize Finn in my eyes and be like, oh my God, what a great character. And, he went in a blaze of glory. Rose comes out of nowhere. She steals the thunder. I felt, undermines that scene. She saves him, and then they pop, he pops the canopy, he tries to extract her, and they have that little exchange, saving what we love, and she gives him that strange kiss, which was not romance based at all. Maybe it was like a shock, after the shock of her being taken down. But I felt that what she says was genuine and nice. She said, look, we don't win by fighting what we hate. We win by saving what we love. It's a beautiful line. It's nice, but it doesn't work in that context. If you want to spread that kind of peace and love message, do it after. I would have been much more comfortable with that line if Finn pops the canopy, he grabs her, goes, oh my God, stupid girl, what are you doing? Why did you, prevent me from doing this? He carries her off to safety, and then she teaches him the lesson. She tells him, look, you sacrificing yourself doesn't add anything to the cause. Don't act out of hatred, save what you love. It would have made so much more sense where they're out of danger zone. But they're in the middle of combat zone. This is a war movie. people are fighting. They're trying to win this thing, you know? And her delivering that line there diminished the character in many ways for me. And then we go into episode 9. I don't think we need to argue that. She's just there for a second. She's like, hi, bye, you know, and she disappears. Not a great way to represent any ethnic group, in my opinion. And it's a shame because I love the actress. She's beautiful. I think she tackled the role pretty well, but the way that the script has gone, you know, didn't work for me. The next topic I want to talk about is social movements. Haldo, the one that at the end of the episode 8 sacrifices herself with the ship, but during the course of the film, I felt like she talks down to Poe Dameron, the pilot, and he's grounded for some reason for majority of the film. And I felt a character who's supposed to be prominent in episode 7. He's a hotshot pilot. Yes, he has a temperament. You know, he doesn't always listen, but he is, you know, charismatic. He's strong, and he's definitely skilled. And for him to descend into this teenager that Haldo talks down to, it felt like an extreme case of feminism. I'm sorry. And here's the thing: before you jump into commenting, you know, and start, you know, hacking away at your keyboard, I loved Haldo in Leia novel. I thought she was an interesting character that brings more to Leia's character during her teenage years, and Haldo is established as her childhood friend, and how the two characters work together and the dynamics of their relationship worked so well that for me personally, when I was watching The Last Jedi after the book, I enjoyed her more than other people did. Believe it or not, I don't have any hate against this character. I thought my experience was enhanced. But the problem was that I felt that keeping Poe Dameron, somebody that you rely on as your ace pilot, out of the loop and not revealing the secret mission to him didn't make any sense. And I don't know if the movie certainly didn't try to project that, but it came off as she's talking down to him. It's like, you stupid boy, you stupid man. And it just doesn't work. It didn't work for me. And I'm sorry to say that Haldo was one of these characters that just, Now, another minor thing that I wanted to enter that was Rey's stop holding my hand thing with Finn in the beginning of episode 7. I felt it was kind of funny. She's like, hey, stop holding my hand. I'm self-reliant. When she does it again in the third time, I'm like, okay, enough is enough. We understand that she's strong. Take it away. Continue the story. I felt like J.J. Abrams got a little bit too fancy with that line there. But overall, she was done, pretty well. And it was interesting to see that Rey was the character that was strong, but at one point she had to rely on friends, regardless whether they were males or not. Just like Wonder Woman, the first movie, I felt was very well balanced, and so is Rey in the entire sequel trilogy, is that she relies on other people to help her. No matter how strong you are, male or female, you need to open up to people. You need people to teach you. Luke Skywalker teaches her thing. Ben Solo teaches her other things. And that only enhances her experience, and in my eyes, only elevates her as a woman. I enjoy seeing stuff like that. And the last thing in terms of social movements, I want to talk about Cantabite. I will not argue that scene breaks the pace of the film, and I think it could have been quite shorter. But after a second watch in theaters, I am not confident that that entire scene needs to disappear. And I'll explain why. It doesn't work when it comes to Finn's and Rose's mission, because they don't get the hacker that they need, and the one that they get fails their mission. So the whole thing kind of like falls on its head. But once again, they didn't know that. They thought that the hacker that they do get will help them. So, they act out of ignorance. But what does work in that scene, when I saw it a second time in theaters, and I saw it from a child's perspective, and you see these very fun looking, horses, and Rose makes a comment about this society that lives off the poor people and it makes money off the war, and how she would love to stomp it all down, and how would they liberate all these animals. Yeah, it's a kind of like animal rights activism kind of message, and I felt it's suitable for the film, and it created for some fun, escapist fun for children when the animals, creatures breaks loose and the pair, settles one of the creatures and they make their escape. It was fun to watch visually, and I felt it was an interesting and casual way, subtle way to talk about the saved animals kind of movement. That was interesting to me, so I didn't mind that. And to close off this video, something I wanted to talk about was fan catering. The power of fans through social media to dictate to big corporations and studios to what make and not make. It's a double-edged sword. I think the best way to go about it is to vote with your pockets, with your wallets, with your money. If you don't like something, and if you're a principled person, then don't buy anything. If you don't think that the sequel trilogy is good, stop watching every movie. Stop watching The Bad Batch because it's still from Disney. You can't pick and choose and then say you're a principled person. Don't read the books. Stop it. I'm totally fine with that. I've met fans who say they don't want any new stuff. They're not being toxic. They just say, look, it's not for me. I don't like this. Well, my good friend William, he doesn't like the sequel trilogy, but he likes the books, and he's not one of the boycotters. He's like, yeah, I like it. I don't enjoy the movies, but I think the books are fine. But you don't get to say what is good and what is not good. The comments like, Kathleen Kennedy's not behind Mandalorian. That's why it's good. Really? The president of the company Lucasfilm, who is the first one to answer to Disney, doesn't have anything to do with Mandalorian. I think there's a lot of wishful thinking going on there, and I completely disagree with that sentiment. And I honestly believe it's more like a childish mentality, honestly. Sorry. Speaking my mind here. George Lucas never catered to fans. And I'm not the biggest fan of prequels. I think they're okay, they're watchable movies. I still watch them in my marathon. There are a lot of endearing things that I find in them. They're not the greatest films. I don't think they live up to the legacy of the original Star Wars saga, and neither do the sequels, by the way. But what I always will respect and cherish about George, he comes from a school of thought, from a generation of filmmakers where there's integrity of his vision. This is the film that I'm making. It's my vision, and I'm not making it to please you. I welcome you. I invite you to join me in this story, and hopefully you will like it. If you don't, big deal. Just like Ron Howard, the way that he defended Solo movie, and he said, look, too bad fans didn't like it, but I think we genuinely made a good movie, and I agree with him. That's the way to go. When you start plugging things and adjust filmmaking according to what social trends are, what fans are talking about, then you have a jumble of things that just don't mesh. You have a soup with too many ingredients, and you try to cater and please everybody, and you end up with a mess. And I also don't like that social media as a platform has created this group of people who I believe are a minority, and I'll explain why. Out of millions, hundreds of millions of Star Wars fans around the world that go and watch Star Wars, there's maybe 200,000, maybe 300,000, maybe a million, which is a still vast minority of people who are very active on social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic. And because they don't like something, they go out of their way, especially YouTubers, to try to convince everybody that those movies are bad, or this book is bad, or I don't like this, or the prequels sucked, And that sense of entitlement makes them believe that they speak for everybody. You don't. I'm sorry. Just because you feel a certain way, just because a certain movie has a certain Rotten Tomato rating, it will not shift the winds, and it will not change how the vast majority of people who don't even have time to go on social media and look at the stuff you're yapping about all day long, they will disagree with you. And I think instead of holding the doors and saying gatekeeping and saying like, oh, I don't like it, let's boycott Disney, everybody should hate it. Like some YouTubers go and they hate every single Star Wars official channel YouTube video dealing with High Republic. I don't think that's the way to go about it. Once again, if you think you're a principled person and you want to affect a real change in a constructive way, because nobody will listen to you when you're being toxic, when you're trying to be negative, people get exhausted and tired of it like I am. And that's why I created this channel, to create a platform where you can say, I don't like it. And I can say, but I do, but why don't you? And we have this exchange, and we build off each other, and we come to some sort of understanding. And when we have understanding, then I believe we can affect real change. And the best way we can do it, once again, is with your pocket. You know, I will never understand a person who says High Republic books are bad. Well, I talk to some people on Facebook and say, well, how do you know they're bad? Have you read them? Well, I read enough. I read the synopsis and I watched a couple of YouTube videos. I know enough, and they're bad. Well, I'm sorry, that doesn't constitute an informed opinion. If you consider yourself a real fan, you're an adult, you have a paid job, I think the bare minimum that you should do is at least buy one book, read it, and then when you come back to me and we're having this discussion, they say, well, you know what, Ben, I don't like it. I think it has these agendas, it has these characters that are woke or whatever reason, and you support it with arguments, and you have a very strong opinion about it. I will be much more receptive to what you're saying, because you come from a place where you spend the time and effort and money to be a real fan. And if you don't do that, then your words don't carry much weight for me. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this, my very first effort. I mean to make it at least a weekly series where I'll pick a topic and just have a casual discussion about things that I enjoy, things that I don't, to build a kind of rapport with fans where we can feel comfortable to come forth and talk about these things and not feel attacked. If you join my group on Facebook, you know, Star Wars Timeline, again, it's the community I want to build where everybody's welcome to speak their mind without being negative. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate your time and support. My name is Ben, and I will see you next time.